Don't miss out on the feast this Friday at Buffalo Wild Wings. Apple Valley join PA and Church as they get you ready for the showdown with the Seahawks on Sunday. Enjoy great food and drinks and enter to win great prizes. Doors open at 8 a.m. Get the full details at KFAN.com. Keyword calendar.
Here is the beloved scribe. His name's Ben Goessling. In the business, we call him the scribe. At Ben Goessling via the tweet machine, if you'd like to follow him, as 9 to noon does. And he covers the Minnesota Vikings for the Star Tribune, StarTribune.com, weekly 9 to noon on Tuesdays and Fridays with Bumper to Bumper with Barrero, courtesy of Standard Heating and Air and StandardHeating.com. Now, you had a question last night in the post-game press conference with Kevin O'Connell. That was a super cool question, but I really, really liked Kevin's answer. For those who may have missed it and didn't hear Kevin's press conference on KFAN, it involved the runs specifically inside the 20 is where he went, yep. kind of playing bully ball. And good morning.
Good morning. Yeah.
Hey.
They were able to, I think, have a little more success running in short yardage situations than they typically have, and that's been a problem for them really in a lot of Kevin O'Connell's tenure, was just when they need to get a yard, can they get a yard? I mean, even to the point where I think we were like halfway through the season last year before they had a short yardage rushing touchdown, and they, I think, were at the point where you just, they would almost seem like they'd work around it. It would be either the jet sweeps at different times, or they'd just have some kind of a trick concept. The ability to say we need a yard, we're all sorts of out of it. It's a Tuesday after a Monday game.
It's a short sleep Tuesday.
Yeah, it sure is.
I started my drive-bys with the wrong guy. I was like, Norda's like, who'd you start with? Byron Murphy Jr. All right, so a big setup on Byron and Patrick Peterson. Is T.J. Hawkinson.
Yeah.
was the one with whom I started. But anyway
3-2. Did I do that right?
Yep, 3-2.
Okay. The ability to go get a yard when they needed it. They did it a couple times last night. It was the same play, Brian O'Neill said, basically on both those touchdowns, Aaron Jones and Cam Akers. Just saying, heavy personnel, fullback, tight end, Trent Sherfield in there. You know we're going to run. We know we're going to run. Doesn't matter. We're going to go get a yard and score. I think that's going to matter in January. I think there's a component of January football that involves being able to just finish drives and not settle for three. And sometimes that just means very simple, blunt instrument kind of football. And they were able to do that last night. It's not something they've done well, but it mattered last night to what they did.
And the reason I bring it up the way I did, Mr. Goessling, is I've said it 9 to noon before, and I think maybe I've said it to you. It's my opinion, is with Kevin O'Connell. If you listen closely enough to the way Kevin answers questions, well, he's incapable. I mean, he can master the art of deception. He can direct conversations a different way.
Right.
But he also gives the exact answer for which you're looking, but it's in nuance-laden fashion.
Yep.
So he did that after your question. But also, I'm not a big. Well, I looked in the guy's eyes and I could see consternation. I looked at his countenance and I could see that of chagrin. I'm not that guy either.
Yeah.
But with Kevin O'Connell, his facial expressions when he's answering questions, when he gets long-winded on it, it happened after your question. Yeah. When he started talking about the importance of running it inside the 20, where you can just tell he's up in his mind thinking about it, because that brilliant mind's just always going so quickly. Did you feel that?
Yeah. I mean, there are certainly those things where you watch him answer questions, and his face does tell a story at times when he's answering them. And, yes, I think when he's answering that, he's kind of going through, this is important, and we haven't done it particularly well over the course of really the last couple of years, and getting to the point where they can do it efficiently is going to matter. So I think there's a lot of just he's when he gets contemplative, it's because he's thinking about things on a larger scale than just that particular night. Yeah, There's a little bit of that probably in that answer.
Right. And, when it comes to like reading long form things involving certain particular facets of the National Football League, it's like reading stuff on the salary cap. Super boring. Reading stuff on collective bargaining agreement. Super boring. Reading stuff on playoff tiebreakers. Super boring. So that's why we have the Scribe. And we thank Standard Heating and Air, standardheating.com, for aiding us with Ben Goessling. With the Vikings and the Eagles. All right. Same record. Philly is at Washington, then hosts Dallas and the Giants.
Yep.
Probably will win all three. I think the Dallas game's a little trickier than I would have thought a few weeks ago. McCarthy actually has them playing efficient and respectful football. They can't lose to the Giants if they need to have it, and I think they're going to beat Washington. I didn't think Washington will look that good against New Orleans, but we'll see. It's a road game. Of course, Minnesota at the Cappuccino Capital, then they host Green Bay, then they're at Ford Field. So say the Vikings win their final three games. They win the division.
Yeah.
Say the Eagles win their final three games. I mean, they didn't play each other.
Right.
Vikings beat Kirko Chains. Chains beat Philly.
Yep.
Philly beat Stafford. Stafford beat O'Connell.
Yep.
Well, what do we do here?
Well, I think we're actually this is where this is going to get even more complicated.
Oh, great.
Sorry, the common opponents would be I think that's the third tiebreaker.
It is, yeah.
They may end up tied there.
Yeah.
So then you go to strength of victory.
So is conference the second tiebreaker?
Well, conference will be I suppose. Yeah. Well, head to head would be the first one, which doesn't count, and then conference record, and then common opponents, and then strength of victory.
So that's points differential, right?
No, it's winning percentage of the teams you beat, which means there is. I mean, we can talk as much as we want about it, but we're not going to have answers to that question really until later in the season, because like the Colts beating somebody Week 18 could
impact
percentage points. I mean, it's one of those things where I said this on our podcast last night. Like, if you want to go through ESPN's playoff machine, it's great. It's a lot of fun. You can spend a lot of time on that thing and go through all of the permutations and say, well, if these things happen the last 3 weeks of the season, like, great. Knock yourself out.
As long as, of course, you pick the next 3 weeks of games 100% correctly as part of that formula.
If you're doing that, take all of it to Vegas, and you can make so much money that you don't need to go prove your intelligence on Twitter anymore.
Wow.
And
that sounds amazing,
you're
actually.
set for life. Yeah. I mean, if you're that good at handicapping, great.
Now, the key to this, PA and I were kind of joking about it. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but this NFC North is becoming kind of a historically good division, right? And so they're going to be tied. If they both win out, they'll be tied in conference record. Common opponents, because of so few losses, it's actually really easy to figure out. The Bucs and the Rams won. So you do get the strength of victory. They're finishing with a currently 9-win Washington team and then a 6-win Dallas team and the dredge of the NFL and the Giants. The Vikings will have to go beat a double-digit win team in the Packers, a double-digit win team in the Kitties, and a team that, I mean, this Geno health thing could play out over the final three, and the Vikings actually beating them would then hurt maybe that strength of schedule. But in the end, or strength of victory, but the quality of opponents, it's a WWW for the Vikings down the stretch as well. So however close it is, I saw somebody put out there on X last night that I think even he projecting down the road, the Vikings are actually already ahead in strength of victory.
Yeah.
And that would only maybe ensure that tiebreaker goes the way of the purple if they both win out.
Yeah, I think you're right, because as you mentioned, if they beat these three teams, you're adding a lot of strength of victory to your, sort of satchel of wins.
About 25 wins between just the final 2 weeks alone.
Right, yeah. I mean, you're talking about a lot of quality wins, whereas the Eagles don't have that many opportunities to get those yet. And that, yes, I think that would, most of the permutations of this I looked at do favor the Vikings if it comes to that. I think it's safe to say that if they win their last three, they're going to be in pretty good shape. In the words of the former defensive coordinator, they're going to like what they see, I think, overall.
Do you like their chances to win their final three?
I like their chances to win on Sunday more than I've probably said about them going to Seattle, which I don't think they've won there since like 2006. I don't know if that's the exact year. It's been a very long time. It's before Russell Wilson came to town.
06. I think Ben Lieber had a defensive touchdown, and Chester Taylor had the longest run in the history of Minnesota Vikings football.
The 95-yarder?
I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's the last time they won there.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, we got 2012. So. Percy's throwing a tantrum.
Right.
2009. Nope. It is 06. You're right.
There you go.
That Monday night football game.
Which one?
The one, the former Viking, the undrafted corner from Tennessee, Zimmer Love. Then he got plucked up to practice squad. Something Coleman or Justin.
Yes.
Justin Coleman.
Before he went and got a huge contract.
Yes. And so he had a scoop and score, I think, to win the game.
Yep.
Wow, it's been a disaster
was a
there.
shootout. 18 was John DiFilippo's Waterloo. They almost got shut out in that game, and then Zimmer fired him basically on the tarmac on the way home.
Well, that was
Cam Dantzler, what are you doing?
Yeah,
Cam Dantzler, what are you doing?
That was that game? No, that was 2020. Yeah.
Cam Dantzler 2020 was the one where NBC had a close-up of Harrison Smith after that, and it was not hard to read his lips. Well, Cam, cover your bleeping guy.
And that was the game Alexander Madison had a massive hole to win the game.
Right, if he bounced it.
Yeah, run into the end zone, win the game.
Go to the right.
And right, he didn't go to the right. And so therefore, then we had the Cam Dantzler moment. But 2018, they played, down memory lane we go, they played New England the week before.
Yeah.
And there was consternation on like Zimmer desperately wanting DiFilippo to run more.
Yep.
Dalvin's running for 9 yards a clip in the first half.
Yep.
And then it goes haywire. After the game, it basically was assumed Bill Belichick played dime defense nearly the entire game.
Right.
With 6 DB saying, we blame it on the coordinator or whomever.
Yeah.
We don't think you guys can get out of your way with this running thing.
Right.
So we're going to keep all these littles out there until you show you can run consistently.
Yep.
They didn't.
Yep.
Zimmer was embarrassed. I think they were pondering firing DiFilippo after that game, and somebody may have said to somebody, do we really want Kevin Stefanski to debut as our offensive coordinator on Monday Night Football at Seattle?
Yeah.
So let's wait. And then it was a disaster, and then I think he may have gotten fired on the way home.
Yeah, he did. I mean, I was in a layover in Portland when that hit, when that he was getting fired. So, yes, it was that morning. They were, I think, scored in the fourth quarter because I definitely remember we were going to use the headline scoreless in Seattle if they had finished with a shutout in that game and they scored a late touchdown. So that headline never saw the light of day. But yeah, that one was rough. And then 2020 or 2019 they lost, I think, in a high scoring game. And then 2020 was the Cam Dantzler.
Their fat stacks of cash rolling in on Kevin O'Connell to become the National Football League Coach of the Year. He has gone from in most of the legitimate betting markets from the third choice to the first choice.
Yeah.
I think he's favored to win Coach of the Year. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think there's a good chance that he does. I mean, that is, you're trying to read the minds of 50 voters for that thing that, how will that go? How have the betting markets been at that group? I don't quite know, but I would think that, you look at 12-2, nobody was terribly bullish on them before the season, me included, because of the questions about Sam Darnold. And the fact that they have done what they've done and they've gotten what they've gotten out of Sam Darnold is awfully compelling. And I think it's going to put him in a pretty strong position to win that thing. Just looked it up this morning. They're 32-16 with him as the head coach. And they have gotten 22 snaps out of quarterbacks they drafted, Jaron Hall being the only ones that they've gotten in those 32 wins.
Yeah.
So, in other words, they have won a lot without, the preferred solution to fixing your quarterback problem and drafting a guy and developing him. And
the blue chipper?
It's been impressive. Yeah. The blue chipper is possibly next year, but they have not done it with him.
The question I have in this popped. It had been Dan Campbell all year long.
Yeah.
And I know they just lost to the Bills. Still pretty damn impressive operation that's happening over there. I know he's dropping F-bombs on the radio. We were listening to this audio a little earlier. He's fired up right now. Onside kicks and all of these decisions certainly can be adjudicated on social media.
I'll ship this to you via text if you haven't seen it. There's how we have O'Connell weekly at 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
Well, some Detroit radio station, Condi and something, they have Dan Campbell weekly. And the clip was on Twitter, where he just dropped two of the loudest F-bombs right during the interview. Well, they smiled the first time and hit the dump button.
Yeah.
I mean, the second time, I think they were going through the FCC manual to see exactly how we can get out of this meat grinder.
Yeah, and so it's
I'll send it to you now.
It's interesting how quickly that wave has changed because under the pretense, I know that the Vikings are now tied. We're talking about winning out and tie-breaking procedures. The Lions have a right to, to go and win games despite all of these injuries. They're going to have to drop, as we saw in the Bills game, 40+ on everybody maybe to get it done. But if they go and do that, it's like Dan Campbell's done an incredible job with one of the more injury-laden rosters in the NFL, specifically on defense.
Yeah, it's true. And I think a lot of this comes down to, does Dan Campbell benefit from the fact that they were good last year and that he spent a lot of time in the public eye? He's gotten a lot of praise in the national media sphere. Does that benefit him, or does the fact that Kevin O'Connell is a little more of the unexpected story this year, or at least their success this year is unexpected?
Yeah.
Which one of those sells with voters better, I think, is probably what it comes down to. And we have seen times where the coach that has had some success, has had some sustained runs, whether it's John Harbaugh, I think, has won this before. Andy Reid, I think, has won it. So sometimes it goes that way, as opposed to, well, this team wasn't supposed to be that good, and they punched far above their weight.
I think some people get frustrated by that, where they say that the award almost exclusively, we can look back at 2022 and Brian Daboll, for instance, that it just goes to, well, your team was supposed to be bad.
Right.
You end up being pretty good.
Yep.
What were they, like 9-7-1? Or I mean, come on with that thing.
Yeah.
That's preposterous. But that it goes to that team every year, and so it should automatically be Kevin O'Connell, and certainly, you know where my head's at on this. Like, there's no shortage of remarkable aspects of this season and what he's continuing to do with Darnold and this roster. But in the same sense, Belichick didn't win it a bunch.
No.
Andy Reid didn't win it a bunch.
Ever won it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's amazing in that sense. And for a guy like Campbell, who got the Kitties to where they were a year ago, and for the most part, let's see how these final three go, living very much up to the expectations of greatness in 2024, for that thing to drop the way that it did really over a 36-hour period, it's just interesting to me.
Yeah, it is going to be interesting to figure out, because the 2022 one, O'Connell was not in the top 5 in the voting. They talk about finalists for that thing when the NFL Honors comes out.
Yeah.
The voting's done.
He wasn't in the top 5.
No, there's no stages of voting. It just meant that he wasn't in the top 5 in that 13-4 season, and I think he's remembered that.
I bet he has.
I thought this week one, in his victory speech in New York, he was praising the team. He said, "We were the better conditioned team. We were the better prepared team." It's like, was that a second level shade toss out to the East Coast? I don't know. I don't know that for sure, but it's just one of those things like, oh, that was kind of interesting he put it that way. But anyway, there are some of those times where if you are the unexpected success story, it helps. And then there are some times where it just kind of depends on probably narratives and branding, which is kind of hard to
back
to voters.
Back to 2022, why was Brian Daboll an expected success story?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think he was unexpected. It's just, it was probably one that got a little more attention.
Yeah.
Because it's New York.
Big market, right?
Yeah.
Lastly, before the next segment, Ben Goessling, Standard Heating and Air, standardheating.com, and good morning. Now, I record the Vikings postgame report with Pete Bursich right after each game, Vikings.com, if you want to listen. So I'm a little late to the locker room for the drive-bys and everything. So if I'm wrong here, I apologize. But, with the injury situation with Brian O'Neill.
Yeah.
All right, so he's in, he's out, he's in, he's out. We got that knee, got brace or wrapped or whatever it was. Okay, and I understand he's the starting right tackle for a 12-2 team. Anybody check on Ryan Wright? I mean,
yeah.
It's like I was in there for 25 minutes. Nobody went up and talked to Ryan Wright unless it happened before I got there. Everybody's like all over O'Neill. What about the punter?
The Star Tribune, I think, did talk to Ryan Wright, which is we should be expected to do so given the fact we have 46 people covering home games, give or take.
Let it go.
It's a flex.
It's fantastic. I know.
He said that his back was pretty sore. I mean, because he gets hit in the leg, but then if you watch that, his head slammed the turf pretty hard. So it was the independent concussion evaluator that basically pulled him and said, hey, we got to check on this because his head slammed pretty hard in the turf. So he passed a concussion test, but said his back was pretty sore. So I would expect he'll show up on injury reports this week. He came back in the game. But, yeah, that's one to keep an eye on because he's a puncher and obviously the holder for Will Reichert as well. So I think he'll probably play through it. But, yeah, that was probably not one they expected to have to deal with last night.
Kevin O'Connell's press conference following the victory over the Bears takes place at 1:15 today, carried on FM 100.3 KFAN during the program. And also, Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah fills in for Kevin O'Connell with 9 to noon today. That takes place about 35 minutes from now. With Ben Goessling, I'm Paul Allen. Nordo produces. Back after this.
Head over to NFLShop.com for the largest collection of officially licensed gear from all your favorite brands. NFL Shop is your ultimate gifting destination for jerseys, t-shirts, headwear, and more. Take your game day style to the next level with the best selection of NFL gear anywhere. Show off your team pride this holiday season with styles fit for the whole family. To shop now, go to NFLShop.com.
KFAN.
Join the Power Trip Zach Halverson at Treasure Island this Friday for a Daughtry pre-party in the parlay. Join him starting at 4 p.m. for your chance to win last-minute tickets and upgrades. Get the full details now at KFAN.com, keyword calendar.
Welcome back, 9 to noon. Thanks to Standard Heating and Air. Ben Goessling, weekly guest here on as part of TCO Tuesdays, Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center. PA will rejoin us momentarily. But Ben Goessling here with me now. One of the storylines from a Monday night game that improves the Vikings to 12-2. If you look at the season as a whole, they were plus 26 in this game, into this game from a penalty standpoint, Ben.
Yeah.
And that's a massive advantage, right? 26 additional flags called on their opponents through the first 13. That's a couple a game, and that can make a big difference.
Right.
And ultimately last night, I think the Bears, it was somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe, let me see here, I had it in front of me. They had 80 yards in penalties last night. What was up, close to 100, excuse me. What was up with Cam Robinson and these pre-snap penalties at home, man? I started to feel bad for him. I counted 4 or 5 penalties against Cam alone.
Yeah, I think it was 4. And false starts at home are not something you should expect to have be an issue. I mean, if you're having that and then you're going to go out to Seattle on Sunday where it will not be quiet when you have the ball on offense because of that crowd, which has got something of a reputation for being loud.
The 12s?
The 12s have a bit of a reputation for this, yes.
I've heard on this station, actually, in the cloud cover.
The low clouds.
Or over formerly CenturyLink, now Lumen Field. That may play into said noise as well.
Yeah, I think it probably does. I mean, it's like having a roof, I suppose, in an atmospheric sense. But anyway, yes, the fact that you're having false start issues at home is not a good thing, and I'm sure they'll address it and try to get that cleaned up this week. But yeah, they were sloppier in that regard last night than they've been for a lot of the year. And, it's probably something that they'll address in the time that they have this week before they turn it around to play out there on Sunday. Cause you can't have those kinds of things. I mean, Sam Darnold converted, I think 4 third downs last night, and there was like a 17, there was a 10 and a 15, a lot of those catch and runs. To convert those, but you don't want to live that way. So, that kind of stuff was unique and kind of a unexpected problem at home.
They made it tougher at times on him as well. Now we mentioned those pre-snap penalties in one breath, but overall we were talking about it earlier. He's a week removed from his highest yards per attempt of the season in the blowout over Kirk and the Falcons, 12 and change. And now you bring him to tied for the lowest yards per attempt. It was kind of impressive at times. I know he threw the pick to Tyreek Stevenson, but there was patience throughout that game, a little more matriculation and less just 3-4 play explosive drives. They had to stack them on top, keep moving, and find their way into the end zone.
They did, and I think, we've talked about the explosiveness, but one of the costs of that has been time of possession, where their defense has spent a lot of time on the field.
Yeah.
And I think as you go through the course of the year, O'Connell mentioned it last night, trying to get some of those starters out, just managing workloads, managing fatigue as they go the rest of the way. Time of possession on offense can help the defense in that facet of things. And I think they ended up closer to 30. I think they were 29 minutes and change of possession last night. But yeah, they took what they had in front of them. The Bears played a lot of shell coverage. They did some different things than they did in the first matchup, but it was still focused on not giving up anything downfield. And I thought he did a good job of finding guys in zones. And, the catch and runs from Jones and Hockenson helped make things better in that regard. But Jefferson and Addison have gotten pretty good at driving corners off the line and then turning around, flipping their hips, and being able to, 8-yard gains to keep the sticks moving. Those help too. So I think they've done a good job with that.
Hey, with the Lions and the David Montgomery injury, the MCL where he's going to be done for the season.
Yeah.
All right, so they've lost to Lee McNeil too with an ACL in that Bills game. I mean that's a devastating loss. But when they lost Aiden Hutchinson into the Vikings game, well they have won every game since losing Aiden Hutchinson. Certainly not saying that was not a significant loss, but they found their way around it. This David Montgomery loss, I will contend, and I will figure out exactly why. I'm just writing discernment right now, is every bit as big as Aiden Hutchinson, if not bigger.
Yeah, I agree.
Because they want to beat on you and pound on you with that extra offensive lineman, Dan Skipper, and Montgomery, and wear you down, and then catch those speedsters and catch those receivers with yards after catch late in games because you're tired. This Montgomery loss it's devastating for Detroit. Quite honestly, I don't know if it'll recover.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and if I can help you formulate your take, the other piece of it is that Jahmyr Gibbs is an effective counterpunch in part because he's fresh. I mean, that guy is electric in terms of speed, footwork, maneuverability, all of those things. But he's especially effective because he's a counterpunch to David Montgomery between the tackles the whole game. And they go for it on fourth down as much or more than any team in the league. And in addition to sustaining drives, those things have an effect on you because you get a stop on 3 downs and think, okay, we're getting off the field. No, you got to come back for one more and bow up when it's 4th and 2 and they're going to run the ball. So when you don't have Montgomery, I mean, maybe they'll still be able to do that as effectively with Gibbs, but now you're putting more on his plate. You're making him more of the between the tackles guy, or you find somebody else to step into that role. But I think it does affect the way they want to play, and they've been really good at doing what they do. And if you don't have Montgomery, I think that makes it a little less likely that they'll be able to continue doing what they want to do.
They have 22 players on IR, 12 out for the season. I like as their careers are going now. This the Alabama rookie. He's going to be a quality corner, probably their best. Terrion Arnold, I believe. He probably will be their best overall corner. Super fast, not great against the run, from what I understand, and a million penalties. So the cat they got from Tampa Bay, Carlton Davis. He was their best corner. Well, he fractured his jaw. Khalil Dorsey is their third-ish best corner. Well, he got hurt in the Bills, so they're down corners 1 and 3. It's
and Dorsey's done for the year too.
Right,
it's over.
Sooner or later, I don't care how crafty you are. I don't care how ballyhooed your offensive coordinator is. Goff never goes downfield anymore. He had that 5-interception game. Since that game, I don't know what his like air yards are or anything. They never throw down the field, and they used to a fair amount. So they've been very good at changing on the fly. Sooner or later, for anybody, anything at any time, enough is enough, and there's too much. And they may have hit that threshold now. And finally, they're patching together Taylor Decker and Frank Ragnow. I mean, Ragnow's one of the toughest players in the last 2.5 decades that I've seen in the NFL.
Yes, agreed.
But Decker, I mean, he almost didn't make the last game. He missed the previous 2. those guys, they're holding those things together very, very, very precariously. So I'm not, prognosticating injury or they're going to be gone for a while, but how many more hits can they take?
Yeah, it is. It does become one of those things that you find ways to manage some number of injuries because you sort of say, well, we're going to adapt here and put a little more on this player. I mean, whenever you hear Kevin O'Connell talk about weighty downs with offensive linemen, what he means by that is you're not getting help. We're sending the help somewhere else because it has to be over here because we think this matchup is a problem or we think we're at a disadvantage, and we're counting on you to say, I'm not getting any help. I don't need it. I'm going to win my matchup. I mean, Brian O'Neill, Christian Darrisaw, when he's healthy, they get a lot of the weighty downs in the Vikings protection scheme because of that. When you lose players like the Lions have lost, the weighty downs have to go to somebody because you have to go help somewhere else. There's just, it's like patching a tire that has a couple of holes in it. There's only so many ways that you can do it before the structural integrity of the tire becomes compromised and you say this is enough. So when you lose players like they've lost, that can be the ones that you say, I don't need help. I don't need the scheme to be tilted towards me to make this favorable. I can survive on my own. When you lose those types of guys, I think it makes it difficult to keep going. And they're going to have to keep going for a while yet. I mean, you're talking about trying to get the number 1 seed and then probably 2 or 3 playoff games. That's a long time to try to manage with this number of injuries. So if they can do it, I mean, kudos to them because it's a tough road that they have to go through here.
The per a tweet at Ben Goessling, covers the Vikings for the Star Tribune, StarTribune.com. These segments are provided by Standard Heating and Air and StandardHeating.com. Here's one. The NFC North is historically good, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
What leads to that? Is it Green Bay in third?
Yeah. I mean, Green Bay, I think they're at 11 wins now. They are. Well, I know they're at 10. They're
10
at 10.
and 4.
Yeah, that didn't sound right in my head either. They are the first team. They have the best winning percentage of a third place team since I think the 1976 St. Louis Cardinals.
Oh yeah,
in the old 5-team NFC East back in the old alignment of things before they went to 4 divisions in a conference.
Jim Hart go crazy.
Yeah, pretty much. The Packers, if they end up at 11, I think that would tie the most of any third place team ever. And if they get to 12 as a third place team, that's never happened. So the funny thing with this is the Bears at one point were 4-2. I mean, the Bears haven't won since then, but you were sitting there in the middle of the season saying 4-2 is last place in this division. So it is, yes, it's been a historic finish to this thing. And you've got a lot of matchups between these teams coming down the stretch. The Vikings obviously play both of them at least one more time. So, and I say at least one more time because this group could have a lot of interaction in the playoffs too. I mean, we could see a couple of third matchups between the Lions and the Packers, or the Lions and the Vikings, or the Vikings and the Packers. I mean, those things are all possibilities. It's one of those runs. I mean, everybody's kind of fretting about how is this thing going to go. In the words of Mike Tice, enjoy the season.
Enjoy the season.
This is not something in this division we see very often, and it's just in terms of the stories and the course of the whole thing, it's pretty fascinating to watch.
And lastly, the Bears were the first time the Vikings played the Bears up to the game. There were some fascinating facets of this. They had just fired Waldron, the offensive coordinator. So now we play him again. You got the interim, Thomas Brown. Eberflus fired a couple of weeks ago after the Thanksgiving game. But still, I'm like, let me get this straight. This team's lost 7 in a row. Despite being plus 10 in the take give, a quarterback into the game who had gone 255 in a row without a pick, and red zone offense and defense third for touchdowns or lack of touchdowns. Wow. I mean, what an anomaly.
Yeah, it is. It's strange. I mean, you've got the Hail Mary in there in Washington. You've got the blocked field goal against the Packers. You've got the clock malpractice against the Lions.
Right.
And then the Vikings, obviously, they come back, they get an onside kick, they take it to overtime and lose that way. So it's been a lot of losses that have kind of a taxing emotional effect. And I do wonder how many times you can come back from that and say, okay, well, shake it off. Let's go back and play again. We got another one in 6 days. I mean, I think it's a hard thing to do, especially with a younger team, to just kind of ride that wave of losing in the ways that they have. So I wonder how much of that has affected their ability to keep going and how much it will. But yeah, you're right. It's not a bad team.
Right.
I mean, they're not as bad as their record would say. It's just they found ways to lose that. I mean, I suppose you could say bad teams do that, but they are not somebody that just gets rolled over, even if their record would suggest that they are.
You, my friend, are fantastic. Thanks for stopping by the TCO radio studio. I know you got some press conferences coming up here soon, and Kevin O'Connell at 1:15 on KFAN. Thank you, Ben.
All right, thank you.
Ben Goessling, Standard Heating and Air, standardheating.com. News du Nord around the corner. Then Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, general manager of the Minnesota Vikings, joins about 15 minutes from now.
Head over to NFLShop.com for the largest collection of officially licensed gear from all your favorite brands. NFL Shop is your ultimate gifting destination for jerseys, t-shirts, headwear, and more. Take your game day style to the next level with the best selection of NFL gear anywhere. Show off your team pride this holiday season with styles fit for the whole family. To shop now, go to NFLShop.com.
Welcome back, 9 to noon. Excited to hear Vikings general manager Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah. He's going to join PA next segment for an extended chat. All part of our weekly X's and O's with head coach Kevin O'Connell, where with the weird week, fresh off the victory, you're going to get to hear KO addressing the media this afternoon, but you're going to hear from the GM, from Kwesi, right around the corner to kick off the 11 a.m. hour. Pete Bursich, the analyst, will join at some point as well. He is in the building soaking in film. But News du Nord. It's time for News du Nord, 9 to noon, which is brought to you by The Casino at Canterbury Park, CanterburyPark.com. Poker, blackjack, table games, feeling the felt, having sips at Chips. And then the Thursday NFL Pick'em game, which is free to play with an MVP card. You just go up to the front desk. I'd like an MVP card. I'd like to feel important today. You get a card for free from the desk, and then you pick the NFL games over the weekend. If you're really good at it, you can win hundreds of dollars. Best place in Shakopee to go for family fun, wagering fun, and the horses, of course, every spring, CanterburyPark.com. Let's start with the NBA team. Now, the Minnesota Timberwolves, as of Friday night, I did not see the game against the Lake Show. They won by 10, so we dig that. And then they absolutely waxed the Spurs on Sunday. So feeling good about that, 2 in a row. But here we are, and it was bound to happen. The last couple of weeks, just this disjointed schedule. The NBA Cup, I get it, and we can talk about the NBA Cup, which the final is tonight. The Bucks and OKC getting after it in Vegas, so good for them. But we've had to wait kind of with this weird schedule for things to kind of get in a flow with our favorite basketball team and many around the NBA. But they are going to play their next game later this week. It is a Wednesday game, I believe, or excuse me, Thursday. It's going to be Thursday. It's going to be at Target Center, and it's going to be against Tibbs and the Knicks. It's going to be against Tibbs and Karl Anthony Towns. I was texting with Lavelle earlier this morning. He's excited for potential media availability tomorrow for players and practice a day before the game. And, of course, Karl Anthony Towns. You'd think, Tibbs coming back, former head coach, all that. He might be part of the talker. We have Randall and DiVincenzo, and they used to be Knicks. That'd be a talker. But, of course, the A topic's going to be Karl and how he's fit in with Tibbs' mix. And we're going to get to see it in person on Thursday night at Target Center. It's going to be pretty fun, PA.
Yeah, Karl Anthony Towns is having a wonderful season for the Knickerbockers. Still atypical Karl Anthony Towns, all wrapped up in minutia after he does big things at the ends of games, like pointing at the New York on his jersey and this is my home. I mean, because he absolutely was slighted, right? I mean, with all that cash they gave him and all the commitment they gave him, he got a raw deal here. There's absolutely no doubt about that.
First overall pick, the whole thing.
I'll be in attendance for that game with Senor Smiley, and I'm looking forward to it.
To the Minnesota Wild, tough times over the last week as they lost at the LA Kings and then Thursday at home against the Edmonton Oilers. I believe that was a Vox in the Box day. It was a party at Tria, and even Vox in the Box could not will them beyond the Oilers. I think it was a lopsided, like a 7-1 victory. They lost a close one to Vegas on Sunday. Now they're hosting the Florida Panthers tomorrow night. It's an 8:30 p.m. puck drop. And, part of that, they beat the defending champs. The Wild beat the defending champs 5-1 in South Beach earlier this year, or Sunrise, I guess, to be more specific. But Kachuk and everybody in town, the Minnesota Wild at this stage, and I like the way Russo put it in a recent piece, it feels like every single day there's some sort of a new player injury to be paying attention to. You can check out The Athletic, and I'm hoping to have Russo join on Thursday, maybe to recap, hopefully, a Wild victory over the Panthers. But whether it's Philippe Gustafsson, you got Volstead making his first start of the year on Sunday, and Kaprizov Magic continuing on. Trennan, he's banged up. Guys going down to Iowa, guys coming back to Iowa. Still absolutely a stone-cold contender in the NHL thus far in the 2024-25 campaign. A nicked-up team that continues to deal with injury, and I'm excited to hear what the head coach has to say tomorrow morning when he joins me 9 to noon.
In between the losses to Edmonton and Las Vegas, they beat Philadelphia 4-1, and they absolutely handled Tortorella's team. And in that game, they got back Jonas Brodin and Matt Zuccarello. So now the next game, they go on a back-to-back and they play Las Vegas, and it was a bump and grind game, and they had myriad opportunities to win. So when healthy, personally speaking, there's really no change to the bet here, where the special teams need to improve for them to get to where they assumedly want to go, the Stanley Cup final. But there's a lot of firepower, and the blue liners are just excellent. I mean, when Brodin plays, they're a really, really stingy team, and indeed they do. They get the champs here on Wednesday, and then they get that Utah outfit here on Friday. After that, they go on the road to play Winnipeg again, and the reason I close with that is because you can amass all of these points and beat all of these teams and have the injuries and get dusted by Connor McDazzle and then lose to Vegas after beating Philly. But if you can't beat Dallas and Winnipeg and figure a way to do it consistently, then you're going to be in trouble when the postseason arrives.
That was the key last year. Russo almost had the way that Lieber had the third down tracker last night. Russo had the against West contending teams tracker last year. It was abysmal, and it's not off to a great start in 2024-25, so something to watch.
Minnesota Vikings general manager Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah joins 9 to noon around the corner on KFAN.
You wake up, put on your Ray-Ban Meta glasses. You're living all in. You realize you need coffee, so you say,
"Hey, Meta, how do I make a latte?"
Brew 2 shots of espresso.
After Meta AI gets you caffeinated, you're ready for some beats.
Hey, Meta, play hip-hop music.
You head to meet some friends, but can't remember the place.
Hey, Meta, call Eva.
Ray-Ban Meta glasses, the next generation of AI glasses. Just say, "Hey, Meta," to harness the power of Meta AI. Shop now at meta.com/smartglasses.